soaring through the skies. One of the world's strangest looking planes races to deliver multi-million-dollar mega cargo across the world.
It's a large aircraft, it's large cargo, so we have to be very careful.
This aircraft's incredible design allows it to swallow vast loads, like bodies of planes and aircraft wings wholesale.
Its shape is unlike any other aircraft. It's like nothing else in the sky.
And battle unpredictable weather to ship them at top speed.
There's always something coming. Losing an aircraft like this could be a big problem.
Breaking this extraordinary machine down into its components, we'll uncover its technological secrets. From an enormous freight door that allows it to swallow loads up to 120 feet long, to speedy automated equipment that helps it to effortlessly shift 47 tons at a time. We'll reveal how this extraordinary monster plane evolved to become a mega machine. Europe is home to one of the world's biggest airplane manufacturers, Airbus. The company is famed for building passenger aircraft, including the top-selling A320 family. This design is so popular, workers have to construct more than 12 every week to keep up with demand. But Airbus has a problem. They rely on different factories in different countries to make all the mega-sized components for this super-selling passenger plane, such as the wings, engines, and fuselage. To pull all the parts together quickly, Airbus engineers have designed this, a remarkable fleet of monster freight-carrying aircraft. They're called belugas. These 5 mega cargo planes haul massive loads across the skies, from huge tails to 19-foot-wide A330 fuselage pieces. The Beluga ST is an aircraft like no other. Inside this giant, a cargo hold so vast, it could fit a blue whale. 68 steel rollers in the floor can automatically load and unload delicate freight. And wings as wide as 3 basketball courts hold as much fuel as 232 Cessna planes. 2 turbojet engines produce the power of almost 2 F-22 fighter jets. This Titanic freight plane can swallow and carry 47 tons of aircraft components in just a single gulp. It's 8 a.m. at Broughton in North Wales. This is the location of Airbus's dedicated aircraft wing construction factory. This morning, the ground team has the mammoth task of sending 4 massive wings from Wales to the A320 family assembly line in Hamburg, Germany, over 500 miles away. Loadmaster Andy Owen is under pressure to get the wings loaded quickly into the first Beluga of the morning. Any delays to the schedule could impact the aircraft production line in Hamburg.
On a busy day, we can have 5 aircraft in. We have lots of work to do in the background, loading the sections. We're expecting Beluga Tango Bravo in at 11:30.
Broughton has a proud tradition of aerospace manufacturing going back 3/4 of a century. And today, the site makes wings for the entire family of Airbus commercial aircraft, including the A321 from the A320 family, assembled in Hamburg. The German factory's deadlines are tight, and delays are not an option.
It's crucial that the wings arrive on time. Every single component has its date it's required on the final assembly line.
Andy's loading team wheel the massive wing parts into the Broughton factory's dedicated airstrip. But before they can start their work, they need a plane to load. High above the Welsh countryside, an enormous beluga streaks towards the wing factory. At the controls is Captain Stefan Dorian.
Chester, hello, Beluga 145 Bravo. Yes, we are solution final, ILS runway 22, and do you have the last signal, please?
Stefan is a veteran pilot of 30 years, and he used to fly for the French Air Force. He now completes hundreds of trips each year in this mammoth craft.
A lot of hours and flying hours, 13,000. By months, it's around 40 and 50 hours. There is only 5 Beluga. We're lucky to fly this kind of aircraft.
On the ground, Andy's team gets word that the monster aircraft is just 10 minutes away. Once the plane lands, Andy has just 80 minutes to load the 4 massive wings and send them on their way. To make his job easier, he secures the wings to wheeled racks called jigs.
We're just moving them from our storage rack and then we'll be ready for the Beluga arrival.
Surprisingly, the impressive carrying capacity of the approaching Beluga owes its existence to the Cold War space race and over 50 years of design evolution. In 1961, NASA's rocket parts were so big they had to use river barges to transport them across the US, which was very slow. Then, NASA built the Pregnant Guppy, a huge plane that could split in half to swallow the gigantic rocket parts whole. In 1965, they built an even bigger plane called the Super Guppy. It could flip open its nose to load bigger rocket parts even more quickly. Today's Beluga has a 30% bigger hold than the Super Guppy, large enough to carry 4 wings for an A321. The Beluga is now just minutes away, but Andy has a problem. Thick fog covers the runway. The visibility is so bad, the plane may be unable to land, and it could be diverted to another airport, eating into his tight schedule.
We had a lovely sunrise just a couple of hours ago and now the fog's come down, unfortunately. The aircraft does have some automated landing capability, but at the moment I think the conditions are even beyond that.
Andy keeps a nervous eye on the weather, when suddenly a breeze picks up. With luck, it could blow the fog away.
It comes and goes so quickly, we're crossing our fingers at the moment.
Andy's wishes come true in the nick of time. Winds clear the fog from the runway, and Captain Stefan gets clearance to land.
Beluga 145 Bravo, we have the runway inside now. As you said, it's less foggy, and we are clear to land runway 22.
The pilots make their final descent into Broughton, and the massive plane touches down, right on schedule. The countdown clock starts ticking. Maneuvering such a big cargo so quickly onto an ordinary freight plane would be impossible. But the massive Beluga has a surprising trick up its sleeve that should make loading a cinch. Behind the nose of the hold, 2 3-foot-long hydraulic cylinders. Inside, fluid forces out pistons with as much force as a car crusher to lift the door higher than a giraffe and provide easy access to the hold. It can fit almost 3 school buses side to side and end to end. 66 aluminum frames provide the strength to support the huge fuselage while maximizing the space inside, enabling this plane to swallow and carry the largest loads with ease. Andy's ground team is set and ready. Before they can load the waiting wings, the massive Beluga must line up perfectly with the loading equipment. And that's no small task for a plane that measures 184 feet long and weighs around 96 tons. If they don't line up the plane correctly, they could risk losing valuable time and, even worse, hold up the Hamburg production line.
We have to be really, really accurate with it. And if you get that wrong, then you're on the back foot straight away.
The massive Beluga mega cargo plane taxis slowly toward Broughton's purpose-built loading hangar. Pilot Stefan must steer the nose of the aircraft into the hangar and align it precisely with the loading rails inside. But the morning's high winds threaten to make that a serious challenge. If he's so much as a few inches out of line, the team will have to back the plane up and start again. This will shatter Andy's 80-minute turnaround target. The clock is ticking. The ground team connects a tug to the front wheels to help fine-tune the freight plane's movements. Airbus designed this entire docking bay to fit the precise proportions of the Beluga's massive shape. It makes the team's loading operation as quick and efficient as possible and protects the delicate parts from the changeable British climate.
We used to operate outside, which brought a load of problems. Sometimes we could sit on the ground for a day or two. So moving in here is much more reliable. If it can land, we can load.
The huge bloated shape and whale-like profile of the Beluga give the aircraft a unique, otherworldly look. But the plane's internal structure is surprisingly traditional. Airbus designers took the blueprint of a standard A300 aircraft and transformed it. They bent the nose of the plane down, lowering the cockpit by 31 inches to make room for longer loads above. By replacing the entire top half of the fuselage, they increased its height by more than 13 feet. To deal with the increased air resistance, they made the vertical fin bigger and added 2 stabilization fins to the sides of the tail. This created the Beluga ST, a unique cargo aircraft with 4 times more carrying space than the A300. Andy's team finally lines up the plane with the loading rig. And he wastes no time to check the paperwork ahead of loading.
This is the loading instruction we received from the airline. Final check over everything to make sure the paperwork matches.
The team now has only an hour left of their 80-minute deadline. Andy opens up the huge freight door. It takes the strong pistons 2.5 minutes to haul it open. The team quickly unloads the empty jig from the last delivery and gets ready. Andy then swings the giant wings into position in front of the gaping mouth of the Beluga. Thanks to the speed of these incredible motorized platforms, he even has time to give the precious cargo one final check.
It's really important that the wings leave here in the condition they're intended to be in. We don't want to pass a problem on to our colleagues in Hamburg. The wings themselves are actually bolted down to the jig, which makes it very easy to secure the load, and it's very safe. So we don't have to mess with chains or ratchet straps or anything like that, which we might do in a standard cargo aircraft.
With the check complete,
thank you very much.
It's finally time for Andy to slide the 2 heavy jigs holding the delicate aircraft wings inside the Beluga. Incredibly, it takes him just 10 minutes to complete both 14-ton loads.
Both jigs are locked successfully in the right place, and we've made good time.
The 4 wings fill the entire fuselage. The Beluga's loading equipment has allowed them to move carefully and quickly. But there's no time to rest. The clock is still ticking, and Andy now has just 20 minutes to guide the massive plane out of the hangar and safely on its way to Hamburg. He checks to make sure the cargo inside the plane is secure. If the heavy load shifts in flight, it could pull the plane out of the sky.
It's a large aircraft, it's large cargo, so we have to be very careful that everything's secured. That's the most important part of our job.
In Hamburg, the assembly team is finishing the last stage of an A321 fuselage. Next, they need the wings from Wales. Stuart Wilcox is responsible for making sure the completed planes are delivered on time to the airlines, who have passengers waiting to fly.
Our customers, who have already seats booked on their aircraft, really don't want any delays to the final delivery of our product.
More airlines rely on A320s than just about any other passenger plane in history. Since 1988, the Airbus factories have delivered 10,000 of these $100 million planes to almost every continent on Earth. Every 1.6 seconds, an A320 takes off or lands, carrying up to 240 passengers. And with no let-up in demand for their star model, Airbus needs the all-important Belugas to run on time. In Wales, Andy is ready to seal the huge door. This 23-foot wide opening is more than 10 times the size of the doors on the world's largest passenger plane. Anxious for the Beluga to get in the air, Andy climbs down into the cockpit to hand over the travel documents.
Okay, good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, hello.
You okay?
Parking ready set, and we did the transfer.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you.
Good.
The Beluga may be massive, but in flight, the pilots are confined to this tiny cockpit thanks to a quirk of physics. Traditional passenger planes are pressurized, so passengers can still breathe at 35,000 feet, where the air is much thinner. But the pressure difference is so great, it threatens to burst apart windows or doors. So they must be as small as possible. The Beluga's cargo door is so vast, if the hold was pressurized like a passenger plane, the door would burst open. So Airbus sealed off the cargo bay and only pressurized the cockpit, leaving the cargo hold strictly off limits during flight.
We're all ready for departure now. We'll push back, start up, and then the flight will commence to Hamburg, where they're waiting for the wings on the final assembly line.
80 minutes into the operation, the team removes the jacks from under the plane. Stefan now has his own deadline to hit. He must transport the wings to Hamburg in time for the crucial completion deadline of the unfinished A321. The fog has lifted, but a new challenge looms. The runway at Broughton is notoriously short. Stefan's going to need every ounce of his 118,000 pounds of thrust to get this plane into the air. Captain Stefan makes his final checks of the monster Beluga ST before takeoff. His fully loaded megaplane now weighs 140 tons. The runway ahead of him is the shortest the Belugas use, so he needs to be certain his plane is ready for the challenge.
We're checking the aircraft. You have good tires because the runway is short. We have to check the engines, and we have to check if The blades are normal, and there is no particular problem inside the engine. No oil leak, hydraulic, and so on.
The captain's ready. He rolls the 184-foot-long monster plane away from the hangar. The trick for dealing with short runways is to get to takeoff speed as quickly as possible. Stefan guns the controls, and the Beluga's massive engines scream into life. Each of the huge turbofan engines has 36 titanium blades that spin at close to the speed of sound. Every 2 seconds, they suck in enough air to fill a hot air balloon and squeeze it into the combustion chamber, where it mixes with fuel to burn at 1800 degrees. As it blasts out of the back, it drives a set of turbine blades, which connect it to the fans at the front, drawing more air into the engine, allowing these beasts to get up to takeoff speed from a standing start in just 30 seconds. Thanks to the Beluga's powerful engines, the monster plane accelerates like a race car, reaching 150 miles per hour. Stefan takes off with room to spare.
When you see the thrust coming up, it's very exciting because the engines make a lot of noise.
The A321 wings are finally on their way to Hamburg, and pilot Stefan settles in for the journey ahead. On the ground, Andy and his team are happy to see another set of wings on their way to the assembly line.
Today's gone really well. I'm really pleased. We've had no problems. Everything's run smoothly. Every time a Beluga leaves, it's a really good feeling.
In Germany, the Airbus assembly team gets news that the massive wings are on their way. Here in Hamburg, workers assemble and complete 12 brand new aircraft from the A320 family every week. Each plane is made to order with airline logos so they can go straight into service. But the workers here must hit incredibly tight deadlines. They have just 2 weeks to make each plane. At the factory's dedicated airport, Loadmaster Jan Volenberg is starting his shift.
I have to organize the crew to operate the aircraft for the operation.
He's responsible for getting components from the fleet of Belugas to the factory floor on time. It's not an easy feat at such a large and busy site. The Airbus base in Hamburg covers almost 1.5 square miles. It has 12,000 employees building the A320 family of aircraft. Airbus turns out more than a staggering 620 planes every year. On the factory floor, Stuart Wilcox makes sure the developing planes match each airline's requirements exactly, and that the planes are delivered on time.
This building is huge. It's about the length of 3 football fields, and here we build the aircraft. It starts at this end in pieces, and by the time it leaves this hangar, it's almost ready to be painted, finished off, and flown.
The Airbus A321 is a European jigsaw puzzle. The nose comes from France, the body from Germany, part of the tail from Spain, and the wings from the UK. To bring them together, Airbus uses its entire fleet of 5 Belugas to travel between 11 different locations, making more than 100 flights every week. This A321 has been on the production line for 3 days. It's had the fuselage, galleys, and cockpit installed, and is now almost ready for its wings. But these crucial components are currently 35,000 feet in the air. The teams here can't begin work on the landing gear and fit the engines until the wings are in place.
The wing installation is one of the critical stages of our build. If the wings don't arrive in time from our colleagues in Broughton, then the whole line will have to stop.
High above the North Sea, Captain Stefan has the monster plane making good time. But on the ground in Hamburg, the wind around the factory's dedicated landing strip starts to pick up. The changing conditions could make landing a challenge.
We have a 10 knots limitation for tailwind with this aircraft. This is the problem. There's always something coming.
The Beluga mega freight plane bolts toward Hamburg with the 4 crucial wings safely inside its hold. Captain Stefan is on time, but the weather at the runway ahead could spoil his day. A stiff crosswind is picked up in Hamburg. If it gets any stronger, Captain Stefan may have to abort the landing, costing precious time for Loadmaster Jan's delivery schedule. Jan keeps a close eye on the conditions, hoping they'll improve before the giant plane arrives.
We expect the aircraft from Broughton in the next 30 minutes about.
The Beluga's shape and 33-foot sides make the plane extremely susceptible to dangerous crosswinds. And Hamburg is one of the trickiest landing sites on the Beluga's roster. Located next to the busy River Elbe, planes must contend with unpredictable winds and large container ships blocking their approach.
The problem is with the shape of the aircraft, we are very sensitive for the crosswind. A small gust can push you and make you go around. So this is something very difficult with the Beluga, the crosswind.
Winds blowing across the aircraft can effortlessly push large planes off course as they descend to the runway. If a crosswind hits a Beluga at the right angle, it could even blow the plane into a ship as it sails past the end of the runway.
You see there is a big river at the end of the runway, and sometimes there are big ships crossing, and we only have the authorization for landing if there is no ships on the final approach.
If a ship looms into view, the monster plane must abort its landing attempt and loop back for another try.
We have to perform go-arounds, and I did 3 one time.
As the massive Beluga appears on the horizon, the team in the hangar keep an eye on the river traffic and the wind conditions. With the clock still ticking, the Beluga needs to land on its first attempt or risk holding up the Hamburg production line.
Taken hello, Beluga 135 Bravo. We're established on final.
With no ships in sight and crosswinds within the permitted limits, Captain Stefan is cleared to attempt his landing. With the runway stretching out ahead of him, he deploys the Beluga's massive landing gear.
Okay, we're clear to land Beluga 135 Bravo, and runway now is inside.
He now relies on the engineering beneath his feet to bring his 140-ton plane from 130 miles per hour to a complete halt without jolting and damaging his precious multi-million-dollar load. Captain Stefan carefully lines up the nose of the Beluga with the Hamburg runway. Under its belly, 10 wheels, mounted on 3 shock absorbers, soften the landing. Inside the brakes, 4 carbon discs can heat up to 570 degrees. 14 hydraulic pistons pulse on and off to stop the wheels from skidding. As the plane hits the runway at 130 miles per hour. Fans mounted on the wheels draw air over the brakes to cool them after landing. That's how this 140-ton monster can touch down and stop with barely a jolt.
We are clear to land, runway 23. Thank you.
With the monster plane safe on solid ground, Captain Stefan uses the Beluga's oversized brakes to bring it quickly to taxiing pace. Against the odds, the enormous Beluga has made it to Hamburg right on schedule. Inside the hold, the cargo is securely in place, thanks to the Beluga's high-tech braking system. It's the pinnacle of almost a century of aviation evolution. Early planes had a problem. The simple springs in their landing gear could cause the plane to bounce, which could end in disaster. So in 1926, engineers invent shock absorbers that squeeze oil into a pocket of compressed air. They cushion the impact and prevent bouncing. But as planes grow faster and heavier, skidding became more of a problem, putting the tires under extreme stress. So in the 1950s, engineers introduce a braking system that applies braking power in pulses. This avoids locked wheels and skidding. With the Beluga safely on the runway, it's time for Loadmaster Jan and his team to spring into action. The ground team now has 1 hour to get the wings off the plane and into the factory, or the $70 billion Airbus production line could grind to a halt. As the Beluga mega cargo plane reaches the hangar, Jan's team is itching to begin the tricky job of offloading the cargo. But he's concerned that the crosswinds blasting over the airport could make his job difficult.
There's a big fuselage, and if the wind comes across the fuselage, it moves the aircraft in the air and, of course, on the ground too. If we make a mistake and the aircraft is in the wrong position, it takes a lot of time to recover these problems.
Luckily for Jan, the Beluga does most of the hard work of unloading for him. It's all thanks to a clever automatic system built into the structure of the plane. Hidden within the floor of the hold, spring-loaded, remote-controlled bolts lock down the cargo in flight and release it on the ground. 68 electric motors power rollers and gently slide the cargo towards the door. 124 sensors in the roller track monitor the exact position of the cargo, allowing a computer to precisely control the roller motors, so the Beluga can unload the most delicate cargo in record time. This innovative system should make unloading foolproof. But it only works if the nose of the giant plane is lined up perfectly with rails inside the hangar. To monitor the plane's exact position, Jan attaches a pole to the Beluga's underbelly.
So I keep it a little bit more right side.
With the clock ticking, the team carefully position the Beluga inch by inch into the opening.
It's very good on line.
Despite the strong crosswind, Jan expertly guides the nose of the monster plane into the hangar.
Now I made the final position. Okay. And last half meter. Okay, have to correct.
The team make tiny adjustments.
Okay, just a little bit. It's enough. Can set the brakes and lift down the aircraft.
The plane is perfectly aligned, but the wind has eaten into Jan's 1-hour deadline.
It was a little bit windy outside. It's not perfect today.
He now has just 10 minutes to align the unloading rails with the waiting jigs and get the massive wings ready for delivery to the assembly line. The team disengage the bolts that hold the jigs securely to the deck. Then they activate the automatic rails and carefully extract the wings from the belly of the Beluga. Thanks to the clever automatic systems and the slick work of his ground team, Jan unloads the wings in the nick of time.
The wings are unloaded now and they're ready for moving to the final assembly line.
This super streamlined offloading process is the result of a 30-year evolution of megaplane logistics. Before they had the Beluga, Airbus used the Super Guppy to transport its plane parts across Europe. But they had to disconnect 36 flight control cables before they could open its nose. When Airbus designed the Beluga, they lowered the cockpit so that it could open its cargo door without having to detach any cables. This allows the Beluga to unload twice as fast as the Super Guppy. With the unloading complete, Captain Stefan prepares for the monster plane's next mission. But the job in Hamburg is far from finished. In the factory, a wingless A321 fuselage stands ready. The clock is ticking for the plane to be made ready for delivery. But the wings need to pass a crucial test before the assembly engineers can get to work on them. The Airbus assembly line team in Hamburg is itching to get busy. This made-to-order $100 million A321 must be delivered on time to the customer.
The customer will arrive tomorrow. Are we looking good to perform the presentation on this station?
Looks fine. Yeah, I think we are good on track here with the customer, so happy to welcome.
Okay, super.
But customer relations head Stuart knows the plane can't be finished until the new wings have passed a final crucial test. Have they made the long journey undamaged?
What we see behind us is a fresh set of wings. It's absolutely essential that every single wing should arrive in a condition that we can immediately install it onto the aircraft.
Stuart's happy with the condition of the wings.
It's a great job from the Beluga team, and it's a great job from our colleagues in Broughton.
The assembly team takes over and begins the critical process of attaching the wings.
There can be no room for mistakes. It's very precise and very, very accurate.
Without any holdups, the Beluga team have delivered the wings on time and in perfect condition for the assembly team to complete the A321. It's a huge relief for Stuart and his workers.
Our Beluga aircraft are absolutely critical. Without the swift transfer, we simply cannot build the aircraft in the speed and the quality that we expect. I will be very happy to tell the customers that their aircraft is in the production line and they can come and have a look at it.
This A321 is nearly finished, and the team will send it for painting, where they'll add the final touches.
By the time it leaves here, it's ready to be painted, and then we're ready to fly it.
With this assembly signed off and their mission in Hamburg complete, Captain Stefan can now get ready for his next flight.
We have our papers confirming that the wings go to the factory, to the assembly line. After that, close the door, We refuel, we prepare the aircraft for the next leg. After, we start again.
The Beluga pilots have another stop to make today on their busy schedule. This time, the monster cargo plane must collect and transport parts for the Airbus factory in France.
Once we finish today, we only do a way back to Toulouse with some parts of Bremen station and reload for another crew to bring other pieces. It doesn't stop.
The team's delivery today was just a small cog in a much larger machine. The 5 Beluga planes in the Airbus fleet are constantly in action, flying back and forth across Europe to supply the busy factories.
If there was no Beluga flying for that, I think that Airbus will be not able to exist.
This perfectly oiled production line is all thanks to this machine's 2 engines with 118,000 pounds of thrust. The 2 enormous wings holding over 11,000 gallons of fuel. The specialized freight door, capable of opening up a 23-foot gaping hole in the front of the plane. The swift automated loading equipment, able to move heavy cargo on and off the plane at breakneck speeds. And a complex landing gear with 4 carbon disc brakes, ensuring smooth and successful landings. It's these engineering marvels that support the Beluga in its mission to supply the growing commercial aviation industry with vast plane parts whenever they're needed and become a true mega machine.